What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is MaxTheCatfish, and today we're going to jump into a game that it just released called Going Medieval. This is out by Foxy Voxel Games. It released in early access on June 1st, and I just want to show you a little bit of gameplay, show you what the game is all about and what it's like, make some comparisons probably to RimWorld as we play through, as you'll see as we get into it, and see what it's like. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start off with a new game. And just like in RimWorld, you have a kind of an option of scenarios here, whether you want to play the standard experience, you can play completely peacefully if you'd like to, or you can play more of the survival mode where enemy raids are a little bit more frequent. I'll be honest, after playing this for a tiny bit, a couple of hours already, I think that most players could probably do with the survival mode. In the standard mode, raids are pretty, they say they occur at steady intervals. It's definitely steady. It's about maybe once or twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year. Whereas the survival mode, I think, will be a little bit more of a challenge for those of you looking for it. So let's give survival a try and see what it's like. And you can, of course, adjust the difficulty down below. We'll just keep that at normal. Just as is. And this is a medieval-themed colony builder, so it's going to feel very similar to RimWorld if you've played that. We are keeping a village of a bunch of villagers and resources, trying to gather resources and build out a small town and defend it from attacks. You'll see that we've got the starting conditions over on the left side, and there's 2 that are pre-baked for us. A new life is kind of the standard starting condition. You'll start with 3 villagers and a bunch of resources, or you could do Lone Wolf, where you start with a single villager in the harshest of conditions with very limited resources for that villager. Let's do a new life just to start things off. And you've got a couple of different options of pre-seeded environments for you to start in. These have different amounts of resources, different map types and terrain. The valley is a good start because it gives you a bunch of abilities to grow crops and also resources like limestone and iron and all the stuff that you need to prosper. So we're just going to give that a go. Here is where you will find and be able to not customize but randomize your 3 starting villagers. And in games like this, it's usually a good idea to have a pretty good spread of abilities. It looks like Aliva has a pretty good spread of interests across a bunch of different abilities, so we're going to definitely keep her. But let's go ahead and randomize our second villager here. You're looking for stars, so stars represent how much experience they gain from actually performing that skill, and then the number represents what their current skill in that task is. So while Redwin here is a competent miner, they're actually interested somewhat in medicine and in construction. Let's just re-roll a couple times till we get somebody like this, right? A lot more stars, and their experience is spread a little bit further. You don't necessarily want the same villager to have the same skills every single time. And then for Rosa, we already have a melee character. Let's re-roll and see if we can't get somebody maybe with intellectual would be good. And construction, that's a pretty good roll, I think. And let's jump into it. All right. So when you start off, you get your starting resource in the center here, and you can take a look at the map. The map is, it's not massive, but it's not too small. You can build some pretty large settlements, I think, with the space that you have available to you. But these are the boundaries, and you'll notice that as my camera's moving around, it's actually going up and down with the terrain. And that is because, unlike in RimWorld, in Going Medieval, you can build 3D buildings. You can build basements, you can build mountain settlements, you could build, cellars, and also you can build towers that rise into the sky. And each one of these has different bonuses to it. As you build cellars and go deep into the earth, you can actually preserve food a little bit better than you would be able to if it was sitting out on the land. And if you build towers, your archers will get bonus range, they'll get bonus critical strike chance, and those stats will affect your capabilities in combat, which is pretty neat. So we start off with our 3 villagers. First thing you want to do is allow all of the goods in the center here, and then let's take a look at their skills because we're going to be attacked pretty often in this playthrough. We've got a character here with melee, strong melee. What was that? A skill of 9. Let's have Aliva pick up the short bow, and then you know what? Actually, she might be melee. Duh, the sword. Here we go. And then for Mark, do we have anybody that's a marksman? Not Mark. Let's have Henrik pick up a bow, and Mark is going to pick up this spear. Unfortunately, in this state of the game, there's no way to queue up their actions, so I'm going to have to sort of micromanage them at the very start to equip the items that they need. And then let's take a look at the UI. There's a bunch of jobs that your villagers are able to perform, just like in games like Oxygen Included or RimWorld. You can set their job priorities here, and it's typically a good idea to have them set to whichever jobs not only they're best at, but have interest in as well. So we've got some that we'll get later in the game, like smithing and carpentry and tailoring here on Aliva. Same with Henrik here, but Henrik is going to probably be... Ooh. Now that's a tough one, actually. I think Aliva might be our researcher at the start, and then we'll swap it over to Henrik once we get research going, is probably what's going to happen. Otherwise, cutting plants and growing and harvesting is going to be Mark's job there. And we are going to set them all to convalesce at 1. What that means is to rest. So if our villagers take any damage, they'll be able to convalesce. We also have a medical person, a doctor in Mark, and sort of in Aliva as well. So let's set those priorities relatively high. And from there, let's just take off craft, because none of them can particularly do that very well. And tailoring on the villagers that don't exactly do tailoring particularly well. And the first thing we're going to want to do is set up a small home for our villagers. So I tend to make these a 5x5 on the inside. So we'll do something like this, and then we'll set a door right in the middle of it with our walls on either side of that door, and our villagers are going to get to work building that. And speed up the game a little bit. Now, villagers have different stats in the construction skill, and they can actually whiff it. They can do poorly in construction, and it wastes the resources. So if you take a look at your jobs UI panel, you might actually want to disable certain villagers from performing the construction skill. You'll notice Aliva doesn't have particularly good construction. In fact, she has a 0 in construction. And that can lead to her butchering a construction job and wasting the resources that it requires. In this case, we got actually very lucky. The other thing we're going to do is probably queue up a little bit of chopping wood so that we have some extra wood for building, because we're going to be building a small settlement here, quaint to start. But let's set down some beds for our villagers to get some sleep. And then let's just put next to this, maybe right next to it, a small storage room. Something like that, with a door like that. And this is where our villagers are going to store their stuff. So we'll set a stockpile, and these commands should look actually, you know what? Hold on. Let's hold off on the stockpile for now. I learned a trick the first time I played through this that actually is gonna really help. And that is in building a basement. So let's have them mine out this little plot of land here. Like that. And then they'll build a second floor to this, or really, it will be the first floor, that they'll store all their goods, and in the bottom, in the basement, they'll store food and stuff for it to be preserved during the summer months, particularly when the weather heats up. All right. So in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got our constructions. You've got some basic stuff like the wooden wall and floor, which you can put down. I tend not to build floors too early because they cost wood, and it's probably more important for us to get, walls and ceilings, which would be a good start. So we can put a wooden floor up on the second floor of our home so that if it rains at night, our poor villagers aren't getting rained on there. And then we should probably construct, where we would expect it, a small kitchen, maybe next to our storage, so that we can get the food from the storage quickly. So something maybe like set up right here, and then a butchering table, maybe set up like, what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And then we can build out a room around it. Yeah, that'll be good. With a door. And then with this, I'm using Control and the scroll keys to scroll up and down through each of the levels. So I can scroll down into the earth, where you'll see our new cellar is going to be constructed eventually, and scroll up to the top layer there, which is really neat. And this 3D building element is probably my favorite thing about the game. It's really, really neat the way that they've put this together and allow you to build in 3D comparatively to other games that really focus on the 2D element, RimWorld specifically. So we've got a small butchering table, and now what we can do is we can set this to butcher any animals that we hunt. We'll just do that forever because it's usually good to butcher the meat. And we can set them to cook some food. And I tend to have them set it so that cook food until you have 9 meals. All crops, all goods in this game have an expiry date. They decompose after a certain period of time. Our cabbages included. And so it's typically a good idea not to overproduce too many meals, or you're just going to be wasting your villagers' time and the resources that they've earned, which is not a good thing when these things are in such high demand. All right, so our villagers are cutting down the forest that's sort of nearby. You'll notice that plant reaping was, I forgot what the word they used exactly. That means that our mark here is not the best. What is it? Is it botanist? Maybe? Possibly? I'm not exactly sure which one of these traits is cutting down trees, but their skill as it raises lowers the chance of them butchering those tasks. No pun intended with the butchering table, but it can happen. So we've got a small bedroom here. Of course, all of our goods are stuck inside as well. I'm hoping that they finish these beds before nighttime hits, but it doesn't look like they're going to. I kind of overburdened them by setting up a bunch of other stuff for them to build. That's all right. They'll make it through. But in the meantime, let's have them harvest the grasses that are nearby, which they actually need for these hay sleeping spots. I think they've got the resources for it. They're just busy building the ceiling and all the other materials that I had them make. So maybe let's just have them prioritize the construction of their 3 sleeping spots. That might be the best way of doing it. Yeah, there we go. And at least 2 of them are going to sleep soundly tonight. One might be sleeping on the floor, admittedly. You know, we'll see. We'll see if they manage to haul this stuff off of the space. I think it might be best if I set up just a small stockpile here. Will they haul this? Yes, they will. Wonderful. So because I didn't have a stockpile, they weren't going to drop off the goods somewhere else. But now they should. There it is. Prioritize building the bed. Cool. So a lot of these concepts will feel very familiar if you've played RimWorld. They should look pretty similar, right? Instead of colonists, you've got villagers. You can still build the same constructions, but this 3D element is really neat. And in the building options, we can build up some staircases, maybe something like this. And then we could defend this as sort of a way into our base, which could be kind of cool. I haven't experienced personally exactly what the survival mode is going to look like. I don't know if this is going to be particularly difficult, but it'll be a little more difficult than the base level difficulty, which I'm excited for. I think that's going to be nice. Let's cancel this and move that actually 1 square back. Like that. Yeah. Right. And I'm doing this because on the top, what we can do is put up some merlins. And these allow us to defend ourselves from archer attacks if our people are up there defending our base. So we could set up a series of these in this direction maybe, right? And now we can set our archers up there if we get attacked from the... there's no directions in the game. If we get attacked from this direction, we can defend ourselves by hiding behind the merlins and shooting them with our bows and arrows, which would be kind of sweet. All the crops and objects in the game, they have growth cycles, as you probably could expect. So you'll notice that these red currant shrubs can be harvested. They're fully ripe, and we can just harvest those like that. And the same thing goes for trees. So trees will yield a certain amount of wood based on their growth. This tree is still growing, so it'll yield us 35 wood, but a dead tree will yield us about 45. So you can micromanage this to the point that you'd like to. It's not required to do so. But typically, it's a good idea to chop down the mature trees because they yield the most possible wood. And let the growing trees do this, grow a little bit longer. And you can get a little bit more wood out of them in the future if it's not urgent for you to get that now. All right. The dawn of a new day. Our villagers, I keep wanting to call them duplicants or colonists, are chowing down on the raw cabbage that they have here. But really, it would be best if they turn that raw cabbage into meals, because this is going to feed them and fill them up a little bit better, and it's going to improve their mood. That's the other element that we should probably focus on by setting up maybe a backgammon table and shrines. Maybe something simple outdoors like that. Each of your villagers have a different disposition towards religion, and it will affect, where is that? Is that in attributes? Biography. It will affect whether they want to pray at a shrine or not. They consider this, I think, a form of leisure. And if they don't have an opportunity to, to pray to their god or to pray towards their religion, their mood will decrease. And if a villager's mood decreases too low, they'll escape from your village and go find shelter elsewhere at a village that will support them and support their religious, beliefs. So you've got to be wary of that. I have a feeling in the early access version of the game, it doesn't really seem to have that large of an effect. But as they implement and improve and develop the game, I have a feeling that these two religions are going to come at odds with one another. It seems like these two are sort of maybe contrary to one another, or different religions may or may not want to live together in harmony. I'm not exactly sure what the plans are for the game in that regard, but time will tell as the development cycle continues for the game. Speeding up a little bit, you'll notice that our villagers are able to build one level above them and one level below them, which is pretty neat. So they're always able to build ceilings, and also they should eventually at some point be digging down into this cavern. Now it looks like actually they've already gotten started. We've got a small hole here. Your villagers will attempt to dig down and create this little area, and then we'll put a floor over the top of it, and we'll already have 2 floors done. Actually, technically 3 once we get the roof of this floor built. There are a variety of animals around it that you can hunt as well, and hunting is going to increase your villagers' ranged abilities, which I want to get Henrik's skills up in range and marksman. There are different weapons in the game that require different levels of marksmanship. So the longbow requires you to have 10 points in marksmanship in order to equip it, but it has higher precision and I believe higher range as well, about the same DPS. But this allows you to equip your stronger archers with better equipment, which is going to help you defend. So far, so good. They're building out the rest of this rooftop over the... You'll notice the construction failed there. It's because Oliva's construction's pretty low. Over the new storage space once we're finished with this. And once that finishes, we'll put in a wooden staircase rather, to be able to go down into that cellar. Might want to put it connected to your kitchen so that you can easily access the food that's being stored down there. I think that would be probably a pretty good idea to quickly be able to pick up the food from the cellar down below. The other thing I forgot to put down is our basic research table, which is probably one of the most important benches, actually, in almost every survival game lately. It seems like research seems to be the way that these games are progressing. It's not in their characters' skills or stats. It's in how much time one of your researchers spends researching. And this has been a bit of a trope in the survival genre and the colony management genre for years now. I would love to see a different mechanic implemented somehow that kind of mixes this up. Going Medieval mixes this up a little bit. They've got a small kind of twist on research that hopefully I'll be able to show you before the video is up. But what happens is you actually have your researchers create scrolls. And those scrolls determine your research level. And I can't click on the research tree until we complete the research bench. So let's have them complete that, and we'll take a look at it. All right, so the research bench has been completed, And what that is unlocked is our research tree, which, you know, in the early access version of the game doesn't extend too far, but it'll keep you pretty busy for a few in-game years until you get to the end here. I'm going to have one of our villagers create us Chronicles. We'll just set this to be created forever. Might as well. And eventually we'll have one of our villagers pop over here and they'll start crafting these Chronicles. Henrik is already on it. Thank you. Which are going to add up to our research allotment on this screen. So here's what happens. Over time, we're going to unlock different pieces of research, which require a number of Chronicles, right? So we can unlock architecture now, but in order to unlock, usually a good idea is agriculture so that they can grow their own food, we need an additional 5 Chronicles. And these add up. So the most Chronicles you have at any one time determine what research you can extend to. And Chronicles take up space in the game. They're actually items that take up a block, a space inside of storage, which means that they can be stolen by raiders. And if raiders steal your Chronicles, you will lose research progress until you've created that number of Chronicles again. So this system, I think, is kind of inspired by what would have had to happen in medieval times, which was you had to write stuff down. It wasn't that you researched something and all of the villagers or all of your colonists suddenly gained that information beamed straight into their heads. They had to go to the library and learn how to make a trebuchet, to learn how to make iron armor, to learn how to smelt iron into ingots. And that is represented by these Chronicles that build up and require space over time. So you can build yourself a little library, a little storage for these Chronicles so that they can have a space that they're stored in. And probably you're going to want one which is protected from your enemies so that if your settlement gets raided, they don't come and take your Chronicles and remove your ability to create, say, a beet field or a cabbage field or the ability to brew beer. You know, these important kind of technological advancements that will become more important as you continue the game. All right, so we've jumped forward a couple of days. They're still, improving their village right now, but we've got a random event, and these happen throughout the gameplay. It's the core way that you gain new villagers, and it comes at a bit of a cost. So we've had a barbarian snack. Apparently, one of our villagers from another land are escaping from barbarians who were trying to eat them, from cannibals. And we can choose whether we give them shelter or whether we turn them down. If you turn them down, some of your settlers who are a little bit more empathetic might get a little upset at the fact that we turned away a villager who was escaping from cannibals. But if we choose to accept them, we'll get a new villager with a bunch of different stats. Not the best slew of stats, certainly, because you can see that while they have an interest in marksmanship and medicine, they have no skills in those two. That's what you gotta decide whether this is worth it. You can also see about how many people you will be attacked by, which is actually a pretty neat indication of, how large is the group that's chasing after them. For the sake of it, because we don't have any extra villagers, it would be nice to kind of grow our village a little bit. Let's go ahead and give Carlisle some safety within our village, and we'll see that they'll join us. I think that they've taken a little bit of damage here. Yeah. And probably it's best that they rest before enemies come and attack us in about 2 days. So when a new villager joins you, you want to set their jobs up so that they're all good. I guess we'll have them tend to other villagers, though their stats in doing so are pretty low. And we'll have them set to hunting. Probably a good idea to put a bow in their hands at our first opportunity to do so. Can we swap out? Henrik still isn't level 10 in marksmanship, so nobody can equip the longbow yet. For now, we'll just have them set to do these things, when they feel like doing them. No stress. We're going to need to build our new villager a brand new bed, which we just unlocked the technology to do so. So we can put that just like that. Make them a nice, cozy little room, kind of a private room here for them. Something like this, with a little window would be cute, and some walls. Beautiful. And it would be a good idea to put a roof on that as well. And in about 2 days or so, if we speed up the game, we're going to see that we'll be attacked by approximately 3, what are they called? Progeny marauders. It could be more than 3. I've seen 5 kind of stretch, as large as 2 extra enemies. It could be less than 3. Your luck is really going to play a role in this, whether you're going to have an easy fight or a more difficult fight, which keeps the game kind of interesting. I like it. And what we'll do just in the meantime is build out not only some defenses, but also some rooms here for our villagers to live in. Let's just do a series of bedrooms here. Could look good. The game is still very much in early access. It only just released, so there's a lot of features that they want to add to the experience. That said, in the couple of hours that I've played, I've pretty much received almost no game-breaking bugs. I've left a bunch of feedback. There are a couple things that I think that they could improve in the UI and some of those elements, but overall, I think the game's actually really good and shows a lot of promise. It's gonna be, unless they change their minds, the developers, it's going to be a little bit more of a kinder RimWorld. You're not going to have pyromaniacs that decide to burn your town to the ground. There's not going to be any drug-fueled rampages, although there are references to alcohol in the game. I have published a full review of Going Medieval. If you want to see my full opinion of the game and what I think about it, go check that out. But in just a little while here, we're going to get attacked. Let's just jump straight to that and see what those mechanics look like. All right, our 2 days are almost up. We can see that enemies are imminent. Oh, there it goes, right away. We are being attacked by, how many is it going to be? About 3. It still won't tell us, but we have a last chance to put Carlisle back in servitude under these cannibals. But I think we're going to refuse to bow to the assailants' demands and see what that means for our colony. Let's take a look. All right, so we're being attacked by exactly 3. Looks like they've got some pretty good armaments here. The axes and the maces look like they're actually made from metal and not wood. So this difficulty level seems to be a little bit tougher than what I faced when I was playing the default difficulty of the game. But now what we'll do is take a moment to strategize exactly how we're going to take them on. I think it's best, first we got to click the draft button. Let's send our people to the top floor of our base. I'm missing someone. Where's Mark? Come over here. We'll draft Mark as well. And we'll set our melee folk to defend the staircase. Something like this. And Mark like that. And then let's take Henrik and station Henrik to be able to fire their bow at the assailants like this. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a melee weapon for Hodirna, so they're going to have to kind of hang out for a little bit and maybe punch some people if it comes to that, but we're going to protect them in the back here. What's cool about the different armaments is different weapons have different ranges. So I think the spear can actually attack through the front lines, which is pretty neat, from 2 spaces away. So you can have a larger army here that's defending. But let's turn our attention to Henrik, who is firing some shots at the assailants. Let's see if they get any hits off. Looks like their attacks might have bounced. Was that bounced off? I don't exactly know what happened there. They're taking a little bit of damage. They're going to have to walk through our spike traps that we created as well in this little sort of kind of defensive position that we set up for them. And we see Winifred heading toward our melee troops who are going to engage now in combat. Let's see how it plays out. It's not looking too good. Also, we've got the small problem that Henrik is about to be attacked from a melee attacker, which I think is gonna put us in a pretty risky situation here. This is a lot more difficult than it was in the difficulty that I played on stream. So this is really interesting that it's pretty amped up, the survival mode, comparatively to the, the regular difficulty gameplay that they speak of. Let's have them attack and gang up on Martin. I think Henrik just flat out dead. Poor guy. Sometimes they get knocked down and the enemies just turn their attention to somebody else, but Henrik was just taken out like crazy. Let's see if we can turn the tide here with the 3 villagers that we have left. There it is. So you don't always have to kill every attacker. You just have to kill the majority of them until they decide to flee. And that's exactly what happened here. So we can chase down this 3rd guy. And what's nice about doing so is we can take all of their loot, their weapons, their armor. Let's go ahead and keep the attack up on Edward here as payback for taking out Henrik. And that's the battle. Now, we were left pretty bloodied and scarred, and that was only the first of many battles to come. That came, day 7 of spring, which was really, really quick. 6 days into the game. Each season lasts about 12 days, so there might be 2 raids per month. It's possible. And it seems so far that with every raid, there comes an additional villager. So you can increase your ability to defend against raids with more villagers. And unlike in RimWorld, your villagers actually don't care if they handle or equip equipment that was dropped by a killed combatant. At least not yet. So what we'll do, let's take Hodirna and have them equip that hatchet for next time. They all have their ability to equip certain items. A hat, some clothes, some armor, and I think this is their offhand. So they might be able to equip like a shield, for instance. I don't think they can dual wield weapons, can they? Let's just check really quick. No, it doesn't look like it. Not yet, at least. But they can equip a sword and a shield, or a main hand and offhand, or if they're using a bow, they can equip the bow by itself. 1 casualty for 3 lives. Kind of a tough trade, considering that Henrik was a pretty valuable villager. But you can play at much easier difficulty levels than this, so don't let that scare you off. If you want to just build within Going Medieval's beautiful kind of building capabilities, you can do that. The peaceful mode, you won't get attacked, you'll gain new villagers over time, and you get to just play around with some of the really cool tools that the game gives you to build castles and castle walls and these really cool feelings. You can create a small village if you'd like to and make it feel like a village with farmers and a blacksmith and those kind of elements. I love the theme of the game, and I'm a big fan. The game is a little bit less random than RimWorld. So if you were kind of put off by RimWorld's randomness and its ability to swing very heavily between, kind of a nice events where you get new weapons or you get traders to come by to trade goods with, versus its really evil events where people just go off on killing sprees or you get raided by a bunch of robots or something along those lines that it feels like you can't potentially ever stand against, then Going Medieval might be for you. The game just released. The developers are working to improve it. They're fixing a bunch of the bugs and have been really responsive with the community to features and updates that they're going to put into the game, which is really exciting. And again, if you want to see a full review of the game, go check out my review of Going Medieval. It launched June 1st. And if you want to see more gameplay, definitely check me out on Twitch over at twitch.tv/MaxTheCatfish. Hope to see you soon, either on stream or in our next video. See you then.